All right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome in to a new edition of the Batter Up podcast, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the Sports Insanity Network. Mike Rifkin, the old ops guy, with you. Our producer for getting us live. Shout out our producer, Patchy. Old ops guy, how you doing?
It's been a rough year to be a New York sports fan, and that was just President Patchy making us laugh as always. Um, you know, Mets will get into, Yankees will get into, but now we have to discuss and talk about quickly. It's New York sports, Game 7, New York Knicks. Let's go! But now back to baseball.
More Knicks later. As Mark mentioned, we'll dive into the Mets in a little bit. We'll dive into the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll talk weekend series. There's something at the end of the show I want to talk about as well, but we're going to start because the Ippei Mitsuhara story continues to, let's be honest, it continues to get weirder.
This was a major break,
Yeah, this
and
is from, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Mike.
Oh,
You're
this is
leading.
from Tisha Thompson of ESPN. Really, the person who broke this whole story to begin with. David Fletcher, a former member of the Angels, currently playing for the Atlanta Braves AAA affiliate, and a friend of his who also played in the minor leagues, both bet on sports with the Southern California bookmaker who took wagers from Ippei Mitsuhara. Um, According to multiple sources dealing with the activities. Fletcher, who was Ohtani's teammate from 2018 to 2023 and has been described as one of his closest friends in baseball, placed bets with the bookmaking operation of Matthew Boyer, sources said.
This is now just boiled into a real big mess for Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
David Fletcher, you know, coming out, saying he's done with this bookmaker, now opens the door for a very big investigation. And I don't know what's going to be found out, but this whole talk of just putting Pete Rose in and that's now off the table because now this is going to really spread out and is going to target for the wrong reasons.
So the article continues, and then we'll continue to dive in. Fletcher bet on several sports, but not baseball, according to sources. But if you go above that, Fletcher's close friend Colby Schultz, who played in the Royal Kansas City Royal system from 2018 to 2020, placed bets on baseball, including Angel games that Fletcher played in while he was on the team. Now we're
Okay.
getting into something that's very interesting.
Because now it's no longer one person being targeted. Now you're looking at you take the most influential player of this decade, basically, and by fault of his own, if you want to call it, he made a mistake, whatnot, is now going to open this up, and we're going to find out a lot more about people who've been betting on baseball through this bookmaker.
Here's the thing for me, because I don't think the article dives into Schultz, and he was only a minor league player. And by the way, we've talked or we've heard at length about how little the minor league players make.
Right.
But there's a part of me that just wonders, that goes, Schultz calls his friend Fletcher, goes, "Hey man, I put a bet against the Angels, or I put a bet on the Angels. I need you to have a couple of hits tonight. Can you help me out?" Like, but the thing for me is just, and we'll get deeper into the article in a minute. It's just, so the interpreter got involved one of his closest friends got involved. Color me a conspiracy theorist, color me whatever you want, but you can't sit there and tell me that two people who are probably closer to him than anybody else in the Angels organization. Although I did not know how close him and David Fletcher were, that is news to me. You can't sit there and tell me Shohei may not have known what was going on. There's still that part of me that believes he may not have had a part of this, but there's a part of me that wonders, did he know? Um, the
And
article
that
goes
makes him an
on. MLB
accessory at
players,
that part. Yeah.
yeah, MLB players and employees are allowed to bet on sports other than baseball, but not with the illegal bookmakers such as Boyer. The league rulebook states that players betting with the illegal bookmakers are subject to punishment at the commissioner's discretion. A player who bets on baseball games in which he did not participate will be banned for 1 year. Any player who bets on his own games will be banned permanently. MLB declined to comment, but a league source told ESPN that Fletcher had not previously been investigated, but is now expected to be. Fletcher did not respond to multiple requests for comments. He started for Gwinnett on Friday. Schultz also could not be reached for comment, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California declined to comment, as did the Braves. So nobody's commenting on this part yet.
They're going to have to sit and get their ducks all in a row and find out how deep this goes. And this is your Major League Baseball headline for the next few years.
Well, and I'm only going to use the Angels as the example because that's where Ohtani was, and that's where Fletcher was. How deep is the Angel gambling?
Well,
I think that's a fair question to ask because now we have two players who are on the same team. You can't tell me someone didn't see, Fletcher, if he had won, strutting around with a little bit more than he got, and they'd ask, "How'd you get that?" And somebody goes, "Listen, I put a little wager on, I'm only going to use college football as the example. Put a wager on the college football game, and won a little bit of cash. I don't know." Fletcher signed a 5-year, $26 million extension with the Angels 21. That included 2 option years in 26 and 27, worth eight and $8.5 million $8.5 million respectively. The team then traded him to the Braves in December. While with the Angels, he was often described as Ohtani's closest friend on the team. Fletcher told ESPN in March, quote, "We're good friends. We would talk on the bus and at the hotel." I mean, we've gotten to a point now, and like we mentioned, you can't sit here and say Shohei Ohtani was completely ignorant to what was going on around him.
Yeah, I'm not saying the man bet on baseball. I mean, meaning
No.
Ohtani. I'm not saying Ohtani did, but there's something very awry here. And as more of this unravels, more stories are going to change, and baseball is going to be in the light yet again for the wrong reasons. This isn't going to change the gambling situation in America. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because every other commercial we say, there's FanDuel, there's Caesars, there's DraftKings. It doesn't matter. They're still going to get the people from every state who can't get to a casino and wants to place a bet on a game. This is only going to put the prime player, really, of this decade in the wrong light in the same way that Pete Rose was done. At his time, when he was going out, there was nobody who accomplished what he did. He should be in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think now that's ever going to happen.
And let's again, we'll continue through the article in a second, but to that point, it's Shohei Ohtani is the face of Major League Baseball. I don't think anyone will dispute that. If you want to say it's anyone else, you're wrong. There could be multiple faces, but Ohtani's the biggest face because of how global he can make the game. There's a part of me that looks at Major League Baseball differently than other aspects of this. Because Major League Baseball, this is the one thing they could ill afford. Now, if we're going to go, let's just use other sports for an example. The NFL had the Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's the biggest one in the NFL. Well, Calvin Ridley's a really good player. He's not a superstar. Basketball, they just had the guy on the Raptors, Jonte Porter. Well, one, he was a full and bet on himself, but two, and more importantly, I don't even know who the hell Jonte Porter is. So,
to be honest, neither do I really.
So the NFL could suspend Calvin Ridley. It wouldn't lose ratings based on that. The NBA could do whatever it wanted to Jonte Porter because, no offense to you, Jonte Porter, people don't know
who are you anyway?
Major League Baseball can't do that to Shohei Ohtani. And it comes back to me, not just because Ohtani's the face of baseball, but think of what would happen after you suspend Shohei Ohtani. The can of worms you're opening up for one, the Dodger teammates he has now, two, the Angel teammates he used to have. But the bigger thing is just, and I come back to this always. Excuse me, $700 million. That's the contract. Why is there so much deferred money?
Well, that came to light to me the other day, and I figured that's going to be a good dive in once we get more deeper into what the situation is like. But that's beg to mind. Yeah, he's saving the Dodgers this year so they can put some talent on it, whatever. It's not that it's not done in Major League Baseball anymore. He ruined what Bobby Bonilla did, but the amount of money that's deferred
He's
is the
making
issue for me.
$2 million.
Yeah, it's the amount of money that's deferred, and it's not until what 2035 he starts getting that deferred.
Yeah, I'd have to get into that.
Yeah.
The article continues in the federal complaint against Mitsuhara. Authorities say Boyer sent Mitsuhara's wire information to an associate known as Bookmaker 3. The sources told ESPN that Colby Schultz is Bookmaker 3. In the March interview, Fletcher told ESPN that he was present at a 2021 poker game in San Diego where Mitsuhara first met Boyer. Fletcher said he did not introduce the interpreter to the bookie, but that Boyer gained entry to the poker game at the team hotel through an acquaintance of Fletcher. Fletcher also told ESPN in March that he had met Boyer once before while playing golf and that he knew Boyer was a bookmaker at the time of the poker game. He said he never placed a bet. He never placed a bet himself with Boyer's organization. Well, David Fletcher, dude, you're in trouble.
And now you have to consider, is this going to be like the Jose Canseco breakdown, the book? The book that released all the telltales about everything, steroid use. Is that going to be this year's thing if Ohtani is suspended? Because let's be honest, it's a high possibility. They're not ruling it out, but they're not ruling it in either. But if there is a connection somehow, and they're going to be diving into this, he's going to be put up in the light everywhere he goes. And that's not what he needs. He needs to focus on playing baseball. He's
Well,
the mentor to Yamamoto. I mean, can you imagine signing $1 billion? And the number one reason why this guy came to you is because of this, and now this guy can't help out your younger guy, etc.
the thing I take away, it's this second to last paragraph where um the poker game at the team hotel, because that leads me to believe in something we literally just brought up. Who else in the Angels organization was involved?
Right. You don't just get into a game like that
You,
without knowing somebody.
right. It's listen, and it says Boyer got in through an acquaintance of Fletcher. Well, okay, that's fine. We don't know who the acquaintance is, but at the team hotel, which makes me think there are other members of the team present. Now, playing poker is not illegal, so we're not going to sit here and say that it is. But what other introductions were made?
Right.
I think that's an important part to this because obviously we're going to continue to monitor the situation because, and look, I still, I think everyone wants to just say Shohei Ohtani is innocent. And listen, he is innocent until he is proven guilty. Nobody is sitting here and saying he's out, he's done. But now we know his interpreter was involved. We now know his closest friend on the team was involved. I think there's more here, and we'll wait to see what else comes of this because this story will not go away.
No. Until everyone is rightfully punished in one way or another.
Yeah, so. And we'll see what Major League Baseball does with David Fletcher, who's, like we mentioned, in the Atlanta Brave organization at the AAA level in Gwinnett. So, all right. On to actual baseball news. And we'll start with in the Bronx, where, according to multiple people, Scott Boras, the agent for Juan Soto, has told the New York Yankees he is willing to negotiate a contract extension during the season. I mean, and Soto's been crushing it as a Yankee at 2 homers yesterday against the Chicago White Sox, although I still believe I have homered against the Chicago White Sox this year.
Yeah. Um, hey, the Yankees are now in that situation yet again. Are they going to take on another 10-year contract? And you have to figure the number is 10. I think that's the highest amount any team is going to be willing to go, especially after the Francisco Lindor deal. The highest number is 10. He's young enough to warrant that type of extension. But now you got to stop and think again. You got Stanton, you got Judge. You're going to now have him at possibly what, 50 million a year at least. And you have this high price pitching. You have all the Yankees, if they do this. Now, mind you, it would bode well for the Mets if they did this. But if the Yankees do this, the prices to go see a Yankee game are only going to be for people who paid for Donald Trump and whatnot to get back on the ballot. This is, rightfully so. The guy is one of the most top players in Major League Baseball right now, between hitting and fielding, whatnot. The question is are the Yankees going to put up a 10-year contract with opt-outs that are so ridiculous that he can opt out after 3, but no, he can stay on if he doesn't, I don't know what that contract's going to entail.
Well, he'll be 26 in October.
Okay.
So that's the big thing. Here's the other thing. You're going to have to exceed 550 million bucks because that's what he turned down from the Washington Nationals all those years ago. And despite, you know, saying things that have been said and things that have gone on, you're right in the sense of, well, look at what Judge makes. Stanton's going to have 3 years left on his deal after this year. Then you're adding in the the Cole contract, the Rodon contract, and look, I think the Yankees would do this in a heartbeat. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but I think this is where we have to have the systems align a little bit because we talk a lot about salary cap and this and that. And to me, if I'm a smaller marketed team, and I'm only using a smaller market team as the example for 1 second, smaller market teams are going to go, well, the Yankees got a $300 million center fielder at the moment, $300 million ace. They're going to pay Soto north of 400. We know that if they're going to pay him at all. How does a team? I'll use this team as the example. How does a team like the Tampa Bay Rays say we can compete with that? It just comes back to the argument of these smaller market versus bigger market teams. Shout out Rick Carlisle for it. But the problem is baseball has done a double-edged sword to itself. Remember, they complained about Steve Cohen spending money. Well, the Dodgers spent $1 billion this offseason. We don't hear a peep. Then we find out Shohei Ohtani, the bulk of his money's deferred, and he's only making $2 million, which still don't know why the Players Association didn't fight it, but that's a whole nother conversation. There's a disparity in Major League Baseball on how teams spend their money. What they have to do is they have to find a way to make it an equal playing field.
And that's never going to happen.
Never going to
Because
happen.
the only way that's going to happen is you float the term salary cap. And that'll never happen in Major League Baseball, no matter how many times we fought on either side of the board for it. It'll never work.
Yeah, well, because the owners won't go for it.
Right.
The
Well, the top owners won't go for it. Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, those three teams alone right there, those three owners in better than 2 years have spent better than $3 billion on players.
So now I'm going to go back to the Soto focus just for a second because I don't think you turn down 550 without the thought process of I'm going to get wined and dined. I'm going to take this to free agency, and I'm going to check my prospects out free agency. So if we put the Yankees to the side just for a second, because they're going to be involved till the end, other teams that are going to be involved are going to be, we could talk the Mets, and listen, the Mets will probably be involved, but I'm not going to just say put them there. I don't really know who else comes into play. The Angels aren't going to spend that money because they need more starting pitching than anything. The Red Sox, who the heck knows what the Red Sox are going to do? The White Sox stink. Are the Tigers a team in position that they think they could spend that kind of money? Texas isn't doing it. The Astros, I can't foresee it. There's only one other team I'm going to throw in here that could potentially do it. The Seattle Mariners.
Yep.
It Listen, yeah, Julio Rodriguez. That would be your selling point. I've got Julio Rodriguez. I've got this great young pitching staff,
Yes,
Juan Soto.
yes.
Like, come to the Pacific Northwest.
I mean, that's not an absurd idea. Uh, Obviously, we've seen what Julio Rodriguez's struggles have been this year. He has no protection in that lineup at all.
Mm-mm.
So they're pitching around him. He has, I think, now 2 home runs on the year. Every number of his is down because they're pitching around him. That's pretty much what's going on. So that would definitely get his bat probably a little bit more option if the Mariners were in on doing it.
Yeah, because what the Nationals aren't bringing him back after him turning down 550.
He wouldn't go back to the Nationals. He wants to go ring to ring to ring to ring to ring. And no offense, he every well rightfully want wealthily to do. You know,
Well, no, I'm if you just break it down division by division, the NL East. He's only got realistically the Mets because he's not going to go to Philly. He's
right?
not going to Atlanta, so push them out. He ain't signed. He's not signed with the Marlins.
Nope.
And then we grew up the Nats. National League Central. I mean, could the Cubs get involved? Maybe.
I don't know what their flexibility is on payroll.
Exactly. But the Pirates aren't going to spend that money. The Reds aren't going to spend that money. The Brewers don't really have that kind of money. They've never shown an interest in that.
The Diamondbacks could. Now the Diamondbacks do have money, but they're just what's the word I want to use? Stingy on spending it. Could you imagine a
The,
lineup that has Corbin Carroll, Kettle Marte, and Juan Soto in it?
listen, by the way, there's a new owner of Baltimore. How
Yeah,
do you listen?
you could put
How
Juan
do you
Soto
think that
there.
works?
Well, you would have to think Baltimore would be the talk of the town because Baltimore has a big issue also. They have Corbin Burns to deal with after this season. That's if Corbin Burns wants to stay in Baltimore. However, I can't see why he wouldn't want to stay there after the season he having so far.
And you got that young nucleus that's going to be around for a long
Right.
time.
You're looking at a dynasty team if they can put it all together. This
Yeah.
Orioles franchise.
So there's no one in the Central that's really going to spend that kind of money. AL Central is going to do it, and then the AL West, like we mentioned, the only team would be the Mariners because the Astros probably can't do it. The Rangers, I can't foresee it. They've spent money elsewhere, and he's not signing with the A's or
Right.
the Angels. So
See, yeah, you got it penned down.
yeah, so basically, what we have penned the Juan Soto sweepstakes down to, it's the Yankees, it's the Mets, it's the Mariners. Maybe the Giants get involved.
Well, the Giants will get involved. They'll throw numbers. Oh, we're signing him. They were stealing Judge a few years ago too.
They did steal Judge, arson Judge, and they signed my guy Jung Hoo Lee from Korea. He's now out for the year with a torn labrum.
2024, the year of the injury, and we said that about 2023 and 2022.
The year of the injury just continues to grow.
Wow.
All right, so the next on the agenda is actually something that was brought to our attention by Dan. And it has to do with Major League Baseball nationalizing its media rights, why some clubs are pushing to end local TV. It's an article in The Athletic and the New York Times by Evan Drellick. Um, Basically, it's talking about certain local broadcasts that are having problems getting money. And by the way, with the new, let's be honest, the NFL schedule that came out, a lot of people are talking about the streaming rights to some of these games.
You know, watching what the NFL did, you have to think, networks like SNY, YES, being that we're in New York, it's just the two easiest ones to pick out, would see a huge drop off and could literally become non existent if, let's say, Amazon Prime, which I know does baseball games already, let's say the Amazon Prime picks up the Yankees for the season and they have the full Yankee, you can only watch it on there. That's a possibility we could see a network do, like Netflix or Max. Any of them can do this. The question is not would they want to because the money, is it in their best interest?
Well, I wonder this because I'm not a subscriber to the Athletic, so I didn't read the whole. You have to read the whole thing. Yes, and SNY are team owned. The Mets own SNY and the Yankees own yes because it's literally called the Yankees Entertainment.
Right.
So
I'm just saying that both of them would see such a dramatic rating drop, it would be no use to keeping it around.
no, I agree with you. I think the other thing is this. I think this goes into all the teams that have had the issue with I think it's called Bally Sports recently.
Yeah.
Texas is the Rangers who had that issue. The Padres got into an issue with that where I think now MLB actually owns some of the rights to the Padres broadcasts. I think where we're at is there has to be a level of being able to come to at the end of the day, it's people getting greedy over little things. That's what these contracts always come down to. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway is baseball is not dying. Baseball's in a really good place. But what baseball needs to do is you can't allow everything to be streamed because not every person in the world can afford to have Netflix, Prime, Hulu, whatever, Apple TV. By the way, you've already gone into the streaming revenue because you do those stupid Friday night Apple games. You
Yep.
do those, you know, the Yankees are on Prime
I
for I
think it's
don't know
every
how many games this year.
I think it's like 20 something games, but still.
Right. And now starting, I think it starts today actually. Remember they used to have the Sunday morning game on Peacock. That just
Mhm.
got excuse me. That just got moved to the Roku channel. So if you don't have a Roku, you
Right.
can't watch this ball game on Sunday morning if your team is participating in it. Today, I believe it's the Red Sox and the Cardinals, more of the Cardinals in a bit. But I also think the local broadcast brings you something a national broadcast can't and a streaming broadcast can't. And fans identify with the local broadcast because if you ask Mark and I what's the best booth in baseball, we're gonna sit here and tell you it's Gary Cohen, Keith Hernandez, Ron Darling.
Right.
You ask a Yankee fan, they're gonna tell you it's Michael Kay. You ask, you know,
You ask the
uh,
Dodgers, it's Vin Scully, and it
Vince
goes on.
Scully's the goat. I wasn't gonna put him in this.
Yeah, I just put him into the that you look. You can't
You
talk
know,
sports without mentioning good old Vin.
you the Padres. It's Don Orsillo and Mark Grant. Like there's so many great local broadcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that there's a possibility of all this being taken away, it's something else that hurts the fan.
Right.
Because let me be brutally honest here. I know they call themselves the worldwide leader in sports. I can't stand ESPN Sunday Night Baseball broadcasts.
Not anymore.
No, when it was John Miller and Joe Morgan, it was phenomenal. But now I got David Cohn talking way too much on the sabermetric portions. Eduardo Perez, who wasn't even that great of a hitter, talking hitting, and Carl Ravitch is just there.
Right.
So it's just the local broadcasts are way more fun and enjoyable. The national broadcasts are, it's just serious. It's more to the bone, and we get why it has to be to the bone. But at the same time, the fans, we're sitting there for 2.5 hours now because of the shortness of games. We want a little bit of humor. We want a little bit of fun. So, and I get it. You're in the business of making money. Everyone is, but not at the expense of the broadcast. Don't don't try to ruin that for the fans. Because again, not everyone can afford all the streaming service if that's the way you want to go.
Right.
All right. All right, Mark, are you ready for some therapy?
God. I'm always ready for some therapy, but God knows nobody wants to deal with the bag of cats that's going on in my head. What Mike
Well,
is alluding to
we're
is
alluding to the Mets.
we're trying to get up the stomach to say, okay,
Yeah.
the Mets are really a problem right now.
All right.
And going on to our next topic, it's the man himself, Timmy Trumpet. Edwin Diaz has forgotten how to pitch. His last three games, he has a 10.80 ERA with three blown saves. This is reminiscent to when Diaz first came over from Seattle in the trade that brought Robinson Cano as well. And Diaz had the problems. Well, he worked on his mechanics, and a year later, he was one of the best closers, if not the best, in baseball. What happened the year after? Yay, I won a game on the WBC. Let me jump up and down on the most unsturdiest mound I've ever seen. Tears his ACL, out for last year, came back this year, a little rocky, and now we suck again. This is not New York baseball by any sense in the means. Steve Cohen the other night by accidentally put out a direct tweet, or I'm sorry, direct that's going to correlate to this. That said, oh, don't worry about it. I'm fully expected to make the playoffs. We're going to be fine. That went out on X when it was supposed to be a direct message. Oopsie, whatever. I want to know what's brewing in that mind of David Stearns. Because as of 10:46 p.m. last night, reported out of Mets locker room, Edwin Diaz has agreed to help out in a different way, even if it means he is not the closer.
Right. He said that post game.
Correct. And that's what, it was after last night's game. He said there is obviously something very wrong with my mechanics. He says, I don't need to go down to AAA to fix it. He said, I'll get it together. Is this a Mets team that can afford to wait? Yes. That's the difference. The Mets we knew coming into this season, and I'm going to say it because Steve Cohen said it, we're not going to be competitive enough, even though he expects them to make the playoffs. The only way the Mets make the playoffs is if we allow steroids to come back into the game legally. The Mets are currently 11 and a half games out, and we're in friggin' May.
They're
This
like two
is,
games out of that third wild card.
yeah, I know, but I'm just talking division wise. I know wild card's different. We talk about that as we get to the All-Star break. But you're 11 games out of Atlanta. There was no question in anybody's mind that Atlanta was going to be the top tier team in the NL East this year, followed very closely behind by the Phillies. This Mets team, the lineup is right. The fielding is right. There's not one consistent pitcher in that rotation. Yes, they're getting back Trevor. They're going to get Benigil and Peterson back over the next month. You have to figure they're both going to be in the bullpen and we'll get spot starts in the six-man rotation. And then Senga comes back. By that point, it might be too late. What the Mets need to do now, is figure out what they want for next year. And right now, the way JD Martinez is hitting, I want to extend him next year and leave him locked in at that position.
So you leave this a little loaded because let's start with the Diaz part, and then we'll get into everything else.
Yeah.
I want to say something about Edwin Diaz that I admire because we've seen it a lot when it comes to New York athletes. When things don't go well, they don't face the media. They won't answer the questions. Edwin Diaz stood at his locker last night and answered every question. So for that, I tip my cap to Edwin Diaz.
Yes. Yes. It's hard answering what reporters have to ask because if you slip up, it's a recorded answer.
Yeah, there is not a person alive who will play 162 perfect games.
No.
Here's where I can't believe I'm going to quote this guy, but Andy Martino said this on the pregame show yesterday. And he said he had a conversation with Jeremy Hefner. And in that conversation, Hefner talked about Diaz having to adjust to the pitch clock because he didn't get to pitch last year. And he said that had something to do with it. And there were other things going on. And the more I've watched Diaz the last couple of starts, there's two things that remain an obstacle for me. And I don't think the pitch clock really has anything to do with it. When he has his fastball command, he doesn't have his slider. When he had his slider command, he doesn't have his fastball. So whether I know he's trying to work himself back, and this is where I blame the Mets. Because we get it. He's the closer, he's the guy who's got to end the game. Well, maybe there's a couple of games here where the Mets are trailing in the ninth inning, where you know what? Edwin can use some work. They have gone times this year where it's 3-4 days without Edwin Diaz pitching. And I don't think, as good as a rest may be at times for him, you've got to remember he's coming back off of an injury. So all of his rest period was last season. Now, if he needs a day, you could avoid using him for a couple of days. The Mets added in the bullpen. Jorge Lopez, who's been pretty good for the most part. Adam Ottavino's been great.
And can't bail out Reed Garrett either.
Reed Garrett, brother of Leaf Garrett. The bullpen, surprisingly, for the most part, isn't an issue. Now, if Edwin Diaz, do I think Edwin Diaz will figure this out? 100%. I'm not. I don't think Edwin Diaz is near the top of my worries of the Mets right now. Am I frustrated with Edwin Diaz? 100% I am frustrated, especially when the Mets spotted Diaz 2 more runs to increase their lead yesterday, and he gives up a 4 spot. That just can't happen. Not to a Marlins team that, let me be frank, isn't any good.
I mean, that slider he threw to Josh Bell, and I commented to you, I think maybe an hour after the game. Look, I was never a very concise hitter in baseball. I was better defensively. But that slider, I could have lined the center field. And it would have brought in 1 run, not 3. But that was right over
kept the line moving.
Plate. Yeah. There was no movement on that ball.
Now I want to go into the overall aspect of something you brought up. So, and then we'll dive into the little parts in a second. The Mets just finished off a 7-game stretch where they played the Atlanta Braves for 3, Philadelphia Phillies for 4, and now they're playing the Marlins.
Right.
Push the Marlins games to the side for a second. If you go back and watch the series against the Braves and the Phillies, the Mets had opportunities to win some of those games that they did. Whether it's the Monday night game where Diaz blows it against Philly, you know, and things happen through the course of the season. But the Mets were competitive. And I didn't expect them to go 5-2 in that stretch. 3-4 would have been lovely. You know what I'm saying? Now they wind up going 2-5 in that stretch. One win against Atlanta, one win against Philly, but they showed some things that they could be competitive with those teams. And by the way, let's not forget they did take 2 of 3 from the Braves in Atlanta earlier in
Yes.
April. So let's not make it seem like all is lost and all is forgotten. Now onto something else you mentioned, and it goes into the rotation. First of all, Luis Severino has been the best pitcher in the rotation, which has been a
And I don't
great
think he pitched
flyer.
bad last night. I just think I just think I don't think he pitched bad. I think his placement was fine, but his speed was down. That's why they were able to get around on him so easily.
He just had the his last hitter, the guy who drove in the next run to make it. I think made it.
It wasn't Chisholm. It was
It was not Chisholm.
Chisholm
They
got the
made it
single.
5. Some I don't know. Who knows? Seven
Lopez
four,
doubled to center.
7-4, whatever.
Yeah,
Like if you get that out, that may change the whole game as well. Who knows? But he's been the best pitcher in the rotation. You mentioned they're going to get McGill and Peterson back. Eventually, they'll get Senga back. Who knows when that happens?
that's
But
now predicted mid-June.
my problem with this rotation is this: the walks.
Yeah,
The walks are the most frustrating thing that this team does.
Aerosmith loves the advertisement, but we don't need to walk this way every game.
Shout out Steven Tyler.
Not a sponsor.
Steven Tyler was a sponsor. That'd be great.
Aerosmith definitely a fan.
Definitely a fan. Um, but the walks, because they're not good enough to overcome these self-inflicted wounds.
Right. I mean, Severino went 6-2, gave us 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 Ks, but walked 3. You're gonna
Which, by the way,
perfect.
walking 3 isn't that bad. It's the games
No,
where
it's
you're
not.
walking 4 and 5.
What was it? Manea walked 5 the other night. It was
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Hauser walked 83 guys in one night.
The
I'm being
Mets bull, the
sarcastic,
Mets
but
bull, nah. The Mets rotation was last year was set to be one of the most elite rotations in baseball with the speed and everything that came with it. Look at what's happened to that rotation. Senga not coming back until mid-June. Scherzer was just transferred to the 60-day DL and is not going to be back. And DeGrom hasn't really done much. You can't tell me the Mets didn't do something right, at least there. They pulled
sure.
everything off.
The transfer of Scherzer doesn't change his timeline. It just opens up a roster spot for Texas.
No, that I know, but he's shutting down because he has a problem with his thumb.
Oh,
So they're shutting him down again.
come on, Max.
So it's the injury plagued season.
But,
I feel most worse to Jacob DeGrom though.
and here's the thing: we knew this rotation was going to be glued together for the most part because it wasn't anything special. Of course, we didn't know the Senga situation. We didn't know the McGill was going to. Well, actually, you did know Tyler McGill was getting hurt. It's her every year. Christian Scott's been really good through 3 starts.
Yep.
I mean, he wasn't great Friday night against the Marlins, but hey, hiccups are going to happen.
The kid's never pitched in the MLB this season.
So,
I mean, he's got 2-3 starts under his belt.
and to the comment about Steve Cohen, and there was the whole thing about him selling at the trade deadline this year when he made that comment, and then he quickly deleted it. I like an owner who's passionate. I think Steve Cohen understands the fan base is passionate. I think David Stearns, who grew up a Met fan, understands that the fans are passionate. That being said, coming into the season, they thought they could make the playoffs. David Stearns thought they could make the playoffs. Steve Cohen thought they could make the playoffs. Carlos Mendoza probably thinks they can make the playoffs, although I'm jury's still out on him for me, basically. Here's the deal. The Mets are going to see where they are at the break. And if they feel they can buy and that'll help benefit the club, they'll do it. But they're not going to do something at the expense of what the long-term plan is.
I don't disagree with you there.
And now the other thing I find ironic is I saw this on, I think it was on Twitter the other day, the Joel Sherman post about Alonso was offered $148 million over 7 years, not this offseason, but last, and he turned it down.
Rightfully so.
But I find the timing very interesting, and here's why. Because I think that is nothing but bull jive. Because I think David Stearns knows what he's doing.
Well, David Stearns, whether it's been in Milwaukee or even his short time with the Mets, you see the creativeness that's in that
Yep.
mind. And, you know, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't jumping out of my shell for Harrison Bader. I love the defensive side of it. The offensive side has paid off this season so far. He's been hitting, I'm not saying he's hitting 500 or anything, but he's consistently hitting. So that's a positive. But I'm going to throw you one other thing, Mike, before we move on quickly. I'm your star shortstop making $30 million a year, and I'm batting 190, and I can't get a hit in the Marlins game, and I was batting leadoff. It is one of the biggest problems on the Mets. You look at the averages: Lindor 190, my boy P 230, Nimmo 216. The best hitting player on the Mets who's in the bench lineup, whatever, is Mark Vientos at 333. I just want to throw out that there. The guy who I've written multiple articles on and back is leading the Mets. The Mets have had a hard turn. They need to shut up, get on the field, take care of business, and get to the trade deadline.
I will say this on Lindor. At least he plays every day.
Yes,
He is struggling. You can see it. There are times where he looks like he's coming out of it, and then he'll start hitting balls right at people. But he posts every day, and that's something that's got to take into account. The guy I've got the biggest beef with is Jeff McNeil.
Oh, I was trying to be nice to the squirrel.
No, and look, he got a couple of hits yesterday. Maybe that gets him going. But this is a guy who a couple of years ago won a batting title. Right. And now he looks as lost to the plate as Patchy does when he's asking for directions. He is so lost at times. And
that he's a third eye blind? That he's part of third eye blind with Patch?
I mean, third eye blind is really good. Semi-charmed life, never let you go. Great stuff. But this is a guy, if you go back, I want to say I don't remember if it was 19 or he had that second half where he was hitting home runs.
Right.
And they got away from what he was. Then he got back to it. He won the batting title a couple of years ago. Now he's in between on everything. And he's a guy who's under contract for a couple of more years, but not at an unreasonable amount of money to the point where maybe I do think about if I'm going to sell off a piece. Maybe it is a Jeff McNeil, and I influx this team with a little bit of energy. Luis Angel Acuna, Jet Williams, somebody who could play a little bit of second base for me, and then you're going to have to make some interesting decisions this winter if you're David Stearns, because I've got Acuna, I've got Jet Williams, I got Beatty, I got Vientos. Oh, and by the way, I got the impending return of Ronnie Mauricio next year.
And the return of Francisco Alvarez by July.
Well,
So you got a nice little young nucleus. I'm just putting them in there to put them in the young
no,
players. That's
but I think that's an important point too, because the offense really sputtered when Francisco Alvarez went down.
because he was that centerpiece in the middle of your lineup that gave protection after Alonso and before, you get to Bader, McNeil, Nito, or Navarez, which
Oh my
is another
God,
point.
Nito and Navarre. I mean, Jesus.
Look, defensively, I don't really have much of a beef with them because they can at least throw a strike down second.
They
Offensively,
have they
either
thrown
one of them could
anybody
hit
out?
water if they were trying to row a boat.
Yeah, have they thrown anybody out? Although I blame that more on the
Nito
pitchers
did.
than I do the catchers. But
Yeah, Nito did.
that's pretty
Nito, look,
neat.
you want to know the name that's left in the middle of all this, who is not getting any publicity but is having a resurgent year again, is Starling Marte.
Yeah.
You're not hearing a lot about him because he's in the middle of this Mets dampened, harsh team right now. He went 3 for 4 yesterday, RBI run, and did not get a chance at the solo, but he's having a resurgent year. Do you right now lock him in, even though you have Drew Gilbert? Do you try to get him on a 1 year, 2 year extension right now to give
Oh,
Gilbert another year?
isn't Marte under contract for next year?
No, I think this is the third and final. It was
I
a
thought he
3 year,
signed
89. I
someone
believe it was
before.
three
Give me
years,
one
89.
second. I'll look that
Yep,
up.
not a problem. No, so what I'm saying is if you take Marte, who's having a nice resurgence, but it's like saying Cody Bellinger, who is in that Cubs lineup, but he's being outshouted by the Japanese pitcher Ota right now that you're not hearing a lot about Bellinger. And that's the thing that can hurt a player. That's where I'm going with on this. But Marte, go ahead.
Marte signed through next year.
Oh, it is next year. Okay, so I'm wrong.
Yeah,
So now you at least know
four
you
and
have a
78.
piece.
Shout out
Oh,
Spotrack.
478. I thought it was 389. Okay. So you have Marte for right field next year. You have Drew Gilbert who's in the wings. I would not be worrying about right field or left field. I'd be looking to go try to get Bader a little bit of help in center. Get a
I
pure
have
center fielder.
At the moment, I'd have no problem bringing Harrison Bader back.
No, I didn't say get rid of him. I said give him some help. Go out and get another guy defensively who can help him out. So when he needs a break, I mean, look, nobody can play 162 anymore. You
No,
have somebody you can look. Nimmo obviously is your second because he was the center fielder, but then you're taking out left field. Let's get another
well,
backup center fielder with some love. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think that's why they've been playing Acuna and Jet Williams in center field to give them a
Right.
little bit of versatility.
Right. They started. Go ahead.
Tyrone Taylor got off to a really good start. He's hit a little bit of a scuffle, but when you're not playing every day, it's hard.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I'll say this: I don't. And by the way, we've seen this the last couple of years. It's not how you start; it's how you finish. And I think if you're the New York Mets, if you could stay within closing distance of a wild card, listen, you said it before. They weren't winning the NL East this year. Not with the Braves and not with the Phillies. They weren't winning the East. But if you look at the NL wild card situation, because of the 3 wild card team rule, you knew one of the Braves and Phillies were going to get one of those spots.
Right.
And I think the only other team you could pencil in for a wild card spot was a team. Maybe it's San Diego, maybe it's the Diamondbacks. They were going to battle it out. The Giants have underachieved. We know only one team's coming out of the Central, most likely.
Right.
This is there for the Mets. And they have to make these games, the ones against teams like the Marlins and the Rockies and teams like that who are really not good. They have to be able to win those games. So,
Yes.
all right. Speaking of teams who haven't played all that well, there's the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, to their credit, as I pull up ESPN, they've won a couple of games in a row here against the Boston Red Sox this weekend.
So 2 or 3 from the Angels.
I mean, the Angels suck. No offense, Ron Washington, but the Cardinals are 20 and 25. Ironically enough, same record as the New York Mets. They're 5 and 5 in their last 10. But the reason why I bring up the Cardinals is because I caught a clip of Foul Territory on Twitter the other day. If you don't know, it's another baseball show. Former pros AJ Pierzynski, Todd Frazier, Eric Kratz,
Great
guys like
catcher.
that. Scott Braun is on there as well. And they had MLB insider Ken Rosenthal on from Fox Sports, who is very good at what he does. They were talking Cardinals. And one of the things I found really interesting in their conversation was, I believe AJ Pierzynski asked the question. If he didn't, I apologize. The pressure on John Mozeliak, the president and GM of the Cardinals. And, Ken Rosenthal basically said, yeah, he's feeling some heat. Well, if the GM and president are feeling heat, and we talked about the Cardinals a little bit last week because after the Mets played them, you and I texted during that series. Paul Goldschmidt looked almost as lost as Jeff McNeil.
I have never, well, I can't say I've never seen. I've never seen a player just fall off like this. Paul Goldschmidt, a few years ago, was probably one of the best names out there. Even when he first came over to St. Louis, he did well. The lack of power for the St. Louis Cardinals team is what's the problem for me. It's not that they don't have players who can't hit home runs. They really much do. They're just not hitting. It's like the Mets. Their averages are all over the place. There's a lack of power.
And the development is hurt. The developmental system, which was the greatest thing about the St. Louis Cardinals, it's hurt them. Nolan Gorman hasn't
Batting
hit this year.
201.
Hasn't hit this year. Jordan Walker, who is a top prospect, he got sent to AAA because he hasn't performed. But this is going on year 2 of him not performing.
And the guy with the greatest name in baseball is not doing well, and that's Lars Nootbaar, the greatest name in baseball right now.
What would you do for a new bar?
The Cardinals have a prime opportunity to make a deal with Klondike right here. What would you do for a
Listen,
new
listen. If the Cardinals make
hashtag Klondike? I came up with this idea, so if you steal it, I have proof.
Listen, if the Patriots couldn't work out a deal with McDonald's on Big Macs and Mac Jones, which was totally a missed opportunity, we're never getting the new bar Klondike. Although I did come up with the idea, so Cardinals hit me
yes,
up.
hit the Sports Insanity Network.
We'll
You
talk.
share.
We'll talk
Okay.
Cardinals. but then rewind it to the offseason for a second. Goldschmidt and Arenado are into their 30s, and you're built to win. Well, the other thing they did, we knew they need starting pitching. Well, Sonny Gray's been really good when he's pitched. Lance Lynn? Nope.
A few years ago, very big name.
But again, you're signing a guy who's 36, 37 years old and expecting him to give you 6, 7 innings, and then you bring in Kyle Gibson, who was never the guy wherever he's been.
Right.
So And then you got Miles Michaelis, who's never been phenomenal.
Mets legend Steven Matz.
Steven Matz, who not a knock on Matz, but he's always hurt.
Yep.
The Cardinals, the Cardinals have always been, for me, they've always been all in, really since they lost the '04 World Series to the Boston Red Sox.
Right.
Ever since then, in my lifetime, the St. Louis Cardinals have been good up until last year. I think the St. Louis fan is knowledgeable. I think the St. Louis Cardinal fan understands the history of the organization. And if I'm a Cardinal fan, I would look at the deals you made with Goldschmidt and Arnott, trade wise. Who did you give up for Paul Goldschmidt?
Do not remember.
Right. Like that's part of the point of that. Like, you don't remember what you gave up for Paul Goldschmidt. I'll look it up in a second. And then Nolan Arenado, you gave up literally nothing for.
So the St. Louis Cardinals, to acquire Paul Goldschmidt, gave up right-handed pitcher Luke Weaver, catcher Carson Kelly, and infielder Andy Young.
None of those guys right now are with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Correct. I was going to say, what do these guys all have in common? Besides being on the same team, they're no longer there.
You've won the trade with Arizona just based on the fact that none of those guys are still there.
Right.
You won the Nolan Arenado trade just based on, outside of Austin Gomber, I don't know what else you gave up. I think you're okay if you're a Cardinal saying, you know what? Maybe it's time to change the direction a tiny bit. Maybe we have to get a little bit younger. Excuse me. Maybe we have to get a little bit more athletic, because look at teams within the NL Central. The Cubs, they're pretty athletic. They're pretty good. Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner up the middle. The Japanese guy, Amanga, who's got an ERA under 1. The Brewers, who knows what the Brewers are going to be in a couple of years, but right now they're pretty good. And you got the Reds and the Pirates, both young and athletic. And there's not a more fun guy to watch in baseball right now than Ellie De La Cruz.
And quick note on Ellie, and then we move on. Got a lot more to cover. 30 stolen bases already. 30.
For the other night against the Dodgers.
Okay. I said this at the beginning of the season when he was up to 10 after the first 7 games. I said, could we see more than 70? I'm the only one at the network who said he can do it.
Listen, keep doing it, Ellie. You're getting me fantasy points.
Same here with me, but I just hope he's not another flash in the pan. And I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either. I really don't.
I really like to, when the Reds are on, I like to watch them play, just to watch that young core of players play.
Yeah, it's a fun team, which is the opposite, no offense, to the Cardinals, which is old and, times they're just
not, so to speak.
By the way, they lost 2 games to the Mets, so, things are that bad. All right. One other thing, then we'll dive into the weekend previews. Earlier this week, Astros pitcher Ronel Blanco got ejected from a game due to sticky substances on his hand. That's an automatic 10-game suspension. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the other night during the Dodger game, Tyler Glasnow was checked for a long time and was allowed to stay into the game. And it takes me back to last year with the Domingo Germán situation, where he got checked and then was told to go wash his hands.
Yes.
So here's the thing for me on this whole sticky substance rule in Major League Baseball. It has to change. It has to change because there is not a clear definition of what is and what is not you know, what
That
isn't.
right. There has to be a concise agreement on what is allowed and what is not allowed. Because look, I don't know how many of you out there are watching and how many of you played baseball. I was a catcher for 22 years. One of the most grueling spots in a on a ball team. There was no way I didn't powder my hands before going out or whatnot. My hands were always soaking wet. There has to be some type of give because we don't know what was used 40 years ago. We don't know if what people got away with, between the spitball and all that. There has to be a definition. There has to be a looser grip on this because look at all the pitching injuries that have happened because of it. And I'm really saying that removement of tack has led to all these UCL tears.
Well, here's the other thing because Blanco said it was rosin and it mixed in with his sweat. Listen, I'll say from this. I'm a bigger person. I sweat a lot. When you sweat, your hands get sticky.
Yes.
So if he's using rosin, which is legal because of the rosin bag being on the freaking mound, I'm going to take him at his word.
Yep.
But why is it a different correlation with different umpires? Why do different umpires have a different definition of what is and what isn't used? Because, like we said, Tyler Glasnow got checked for a long time the other night. They wound up nothing happened. Last year, Domingo Germán but was allowed to wash his hands against the Twins. They did it again. He was still sticky. It got Rocco Baldelli thrown out of a game.
Right.
Here's the problem with Major League Baseball. They think these things work, but they don't offer any solution. You can't just go cold turkey like this and not expect there to be problems. This is why you're seeing an increase, in my opinion, of the arm and shoulder and elbow injuries because these guys are used to having a grip on the ball.
Right.
So baseball has to figure this out. And by the way, to anybody who wants to know, no, this doesn't even dampen the no hitter Blanco threw earlier in the year against the Toronto Blue Jays.
Right.
All right. All right. Into some of the big week series this week. Potential World Series preview, Mark. Rangers Phillies in Philly.
This is an important series for the Rangers. Phillies needed to keep up with the Braves, but like we've talked about, the Phillies are gonna be there come wild card time. This is more of a needed win for the Texas Rangers against an elite team in the NL. Like Mike said, a possible World Series matchup. And right now, if I had to give it to anybody, I'm putting this on Corey Seager with his veteran leadership, with top pitching prospect. I think they faced Wheeler the other night, so they won't deal with him. Wheeler pitched the other night, but this Phillies pitching is good. Not great, but it's good.
Oh, it's been
And
great.
and if Texas comes out and is lollygagging all over, Phillies can pick up 3 wins here this week.
The thing I love about Texas is their offense. Both teams have this great offensive firepower. Both of them. And Texas is doing this with a rotation that really has been mangled with injury. And they're a game over 500, but they don't care. Bruce Bochy's a Hall of Fame manager. He's going to get them to where they have to go.
Yes.
You're right. It's on Corey Seager. It's on Marcus Semien. It's on these guys who are big parts of this team last year. So That's really important. So you asked about pitching matchups. Tuesday night will be John Gray against Ranger Suarez, who's been phenomenal for the
Yes,
Phillies.
yes, he has.
And Wednesday will be Andrew Heaney against Taiwan Walker. And
I still laugh at that name every time I hear it.
Heaney or Taiwan Walker.
Taiwan.
He likes Taiwan. And they face Zach Wheeler on Thursday.
Oh, they will
That'll be
face Wheeler.
Zach Wheeler against Jose Urena.
Okay, so they miss Nola. They face Wheeler.
By the way, how good was Nola against the Mets last week?
Lights out.
Yeah,
Literally.
he was really good. And by the way, that's been the conversation about Philly over the last couple of years. We knew they had the offensive firepower, Castellanos, Harper, Schwarber, Trey Turner when he eventually comes back. They didn't have the pitching outside of Wheeler and Nola. Now, what they're getting out of Rangers, Suarez, and they've got a bullpen that hasn't been terrible. Man, the Phillies are there. They're right on the
Yeah.
preface of something. So that should be a fun one. Uh, American League, we got the Mariners going to the Bronx to play the Yankees.
Big series for Seattle.
Huge series for Seattle, who, by the way, won the first two in Baltimore this weekend. In what
Yes.
I mean, I love this Mariner team. The pitching is so good, they just need the offense to get going. And then, listen, I know we talked about him briefly, and I know Dan and Bill do Bombers banter. Judge has gotten hot. Soto's gotten
As of lately.
hot. Stanton's gotten hot. The pitching for the Yankees has been the rotation's been really good. Yeah. But I don't know how you feel about this. I put teams like the Yankees, the Dodgers, and I'm going to put the Braves and Phillies in this category too. I really could care less about what they do April through September. To me, it's about what you do in the playoffs.
And rightfully so. How many times have we seen a wild card team go to the series? It can happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah. So you got
doesn't happen
Marin.
all the time, but it can happen.
Yeah. And then the AL Central, we got the Tigers and the Royals.
Fun series from two really young electric teams. Um, the way Kansas City has been playing as of lately has been very good baseball. In my opinion, let's put it that way. They're 28-19. Whoever said Kansas City would be 9 games over 500 come the middle of May, hats off to you. I would never have predicted that. But look at the one name I'm going to pull out of it, and it's not a batter. It's a pitcher. That friggin' Lugo
Yeah.
is having the year of his life. And the Mets didn't want to give him a chance at starting.
Well, between Lugo, Cole Reagans has been really good.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
The Royals, they're kind of turning into that Royals team that went to the World Series in 14. They have all these young position players that they've got. They added a couple of starters here with Lugo and Michael Waka, who's, around,
Crazy.
it's just they're really taking that next step. And Detroit too.
Yes.
Give the Tigers some credit. They are, they're about 500 at the moment. They've had some injuries, but they just took two from the Diamondbacks in
They're
Arizona.
1 game over 500 right now. They're 23-22.
Yeah, they've just taken two in Arizona over the
So,
Diamondbacks.
and you look at the names, it's not just one player doing it. It's the team.
Yeah.
The team is manufacturing the runs. It's not one consistent player. It's the entire team moving the ball. That's the key.
And they're finally getting production out of Javi Baez.
Yes. Well, what was it? 5 RBIs the other night?
5 RBI the other
Yeah.
night.
Yeah, what a night.
Speaking of the Diamondbacks, I think this is the first time this year, but they play the Dodgers for the first time since knocking them out in the last year in the playoffs.
And if you don't think the LA Dodgers aren't looking for an ass whooping, you're wrong. This is a series. If they wanted to set a precedent, this is to do it. I mean, if you don't call going into beating the New York Yankees 3 games in a row, which was possibly another, I mean, losing to the Yankees 3 games in a row, going into another possible beating Detroit, and then oh man, I really screwed up. I went back to the wrong team.
I have no idea what the hell you just said.
I know. I just realized I was talking about the wrong team. I'm allowed.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah,
Live television, folks.
beautiful.
But look, the Dodgers are who they are. And by the way, how good has Teoscar Hernandez been for them? We know how good the top of that lineup is with Betts and Freeman, Otani. Max Muncy's going to miss some time with an injury. The pitching's turned it around, including your guy Yamamoto.
Well, I'm not going to say I didn't want him, but of course I did.
Yeah, everyone
But
wanted
again,
him.
this monster lineup is not going anywhere.
And by the way, they just got Walker Bueller back.
And we really don't know what Bueller's going to be able to give them this year, considering this is the second Tommy John surgery he's had. So, I mean, I hope they really take it cautious with him because he's an elite pitcher, and I would like to see him go a few more years.
Yeah, I don't know if it's after this year or after next year. He's a free agent soon.
I'm sure with the team they have in place, I'm sure LA is not going to have a problem in bringing him back.
Listen, let him go. Let him go. I would sign Walker Bueller as a heartbeat. All right. And then we got the Braves and the Cubs. Two teams played in Atlanta last week. The Braves, I believe, took 2 of 3. But the Cubbies have played better baseball.
Since what they had at the beginning of the year, yes. I mean, the
And
Cubs
they
are
got
26 and
healthy. That's
21.
a big key. Bellinger back.
But who could predict Shota in Managa and the start he's had to the season?
ERA under
0.84
1.
ERA. But I'm just saying,
ERA
this
under
guy got
1.
a fraction of what Yamamoto got, and he's outperforming him as of right now.
I mean, he's been great. He's been their ace. By the way, how bad has Kyle Hendricks been for them? Talk about a guy who's gone downhill, and I like Kyle Hendricks, but man, it's been rough. And the Cubs, they don't even have Dansby Swanson at the moment either. So
Just to comment on what Mike said, Kyle Hendricks at 10.57 ERA.
he got lit
That's
up
a
by the Pirates the other night.
Yeah. Speaking of the Pirates, shout out to Paul Skeens. Great first 2 starts.
Oh my! 6 no-hit innings the other day at Wrigley.
And this is his second. This is his first year up, and his first year in the league. I mean, second year in the league. He was in the minors last year as he was drafted. I didn't expect him here yet, but it doesn't surprise me. Good luck to him. That's all I can say.
Yeah, he's been great. Now let's see how he fares against a team not known as the Chicago Cubs.
Right.
That's the thing I find hilarious when these guys get called up. First start against the Cubs, second starts against the Cubs. Oh, well, let's see how he does against a team not known as the Cubs. But I expect Paul Skeens to do well. He's been great, really good. His second start was much better than the first.
Yes.
Got control of the walks. So that should be a fun watch for Pirates fans before they get ready for Steeler football.
Oh, God.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of Batter Up, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood. Yeah, anything on the dugout?
The Dugout of Millwood's taking a little bit of a break this month, basically just dealing with stuff that we have in back stuff and inventory. If you're looking for certain cards, don't hesitate to email us at www.sportsandsoundnetwork.com. You can contact any one of us via the website. Be more than glad to take a look at what you have and recommendations if you want.
All right. You check out the YouTube page for content, vlogs, weekend episodes of Batter Up. Go to the website, as Mark said, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com. Blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. Follow us on the socials. We're on Twitter at SInsanityReal. We are also on Facebook. But until next time, the old ops guy, for our producer, the Patch Man.
Our host, Mike the Pun Master.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you all next week. Enjoy your lovely Sundays, everybody. And let's go Knicks.
Yeah.